So I should start by introducing myself. My name is Jane Lindeman, and I'm the superintendent of Waterloo Schools. This is my very first year in this position, but it is my 10th year in Waterloo. So I actually came here as a principal at Bunger 10 years ago and then moved to the central office, most recently as the associate superintendent for 4 years. So I am absolutely passionate about what I'm going to talk tonight, and my job is to not fling my hands so much because I get so excited about talking about what we are exploring right now. And what you will hear tonight is just kind of a summary of where we are thus far. What you will hear tonight is a sharing of the facility options that we're exploring. So you're going to hear kind of 3 themes. What you will not hear is a firm plan of exactly what we're going to do. And the reason you won't hear that is because you're part of that process. So we have 5 community meetings, tonight being the very first, and we are really hoping, the last one finishes on November 17th. So I'm hoping on November 18th I wake up and I have really had a good set of input, and maybe we've focused in on one of the plans or one of the themes. So that's my best hope, but we'll see. It's really up to everybody we're really counting on you. So let's get started and talk a little bit about what we're going to do. So tonight it's just kind of short. We're really going to talk about the purpose of why we even got to this point in the first place. We're going to talk about the task force that has been really busy for over just 3 years, and a little bit of work even happened before that. And we're going to talk about programs and facilities. So why you're here is really to give us that input. And so it's a critical role that you play, and I just can't thank you enough for coming out. So on your sheet of paper, we're asking you to really give us feedback in 4 areas, and I want you to listen for what's easy to support and what is less easy to support or not as easy, and then to what extent do you think that this is even needed in Waterloo? Because I think that's going to be really important as we go forward, because if people say, gosh, I don't know that this is even needed, that'll give us good feedback for what we need to do. And then at the very end, we're going to ask you to give us some feedback on facilities, and you're really kind of one of the first groups that's seeing this unveiled. We've talked about it for a while, but I think you're going to see it kind of in a package. So I want to start with a little bit of background information. When we started looking at high school reform from the very beginning, we started saying, what would make Waterloo better? And we had 2 sets of pushes coming on both sides. One of them was local challenges. We knew that we were not engaging and preparing kids at the level to which we are satisfied. So that's one piece, and I'll talk more about that. And then on the other side, we have national challenges in our nation, and things are happening, things are changing, and a lot of that has to do with the labor markets. And so because we are all about preparing kids for life after high school, it's not about, high school is just the beginning of what happens. So because of those 2 things, this whole evening arose. So I'm going to start by talking about actually the right-hand side of that, on the changing labor market. So all you have to do is go home and Google or look through the newspaper or talk to somebody, and they are going to tell you a lot about the changing labor market. And this happens to be out of the New York Times, but I guarantee you could look at any media, in any website, anything, and you're going to see things like this that are talking about that the American labor force is just not filling the needs. The labor market has changed, but we haven't prepared the workers to keep up with that. We've fallen dangerously behind, this one says. This is another summary point. Workers need more education, training, and skills. And I'm going to explain in a little bit. You're going to see why that is because of the changes. We hear from employers all over the place that they are struggling to fill all of their jobs. And some jobs, as we've investigated, we've been at this for a number of years. Some of the employers, actually many of them, have said things like, we have jobs that we haven't filled. They've been unfilled for 2 years because there just isn't anybody out there to do that. And so we know that that's true. So why do we need change? So I want to just play this. This is just an interview from a few people around the community. We just, instead of having you go out to everybody else, we're going to bring a few to you.
The environment in which learning has to take place is changing all the time, just as the workplace is. And the place where they're learning has to reflect the place where they're going to spend the rest of their life.
Some kids are going to have to be reached a different way rather than the traditional textbook, lecture, test, that sort of thing.
Basically, they just get bored. And we're not finding what keeps them interested. They're losing interest, and they're trying to find other things to excite them.
It'll help students want to stay in school instead of dropping out.
They need something to do in life instead of sitting at home and doing nothing.
I think if you got them into the field that they're interested in, that they would show more of an interest in coming to school and actually be interested in coming to school, period. I mean, for them to look forward to something that would bring them to school more.
A reason to be here. They don't see the connection between what they're doing in school and how it will benefit them later in life.
I think that there's a certain group of students that aren't headed directly to higher level classrooms, maybe in a college setting. They want to enter the workforce, but they need to have the certifications that'll help them to get employed right out of high school.
What we're finding is that it's harder and harder to find the people with the skills to fill the jobs that fuel economic growth in the Cedar Valley, and that's something we have to overcome.
All the major businesses in the Cedar Valley area compete globally now, not just within the state or within the country, but we're competing globally for business, and we're competing globally for employees. And so we have to be in places that they have the best employees. And even though our education is good just really is not cutting it any longer in business. We have to have great employees. We have to have great graduates.
I want to show you clearly what has happened over the last decades. So when we look at the job, what's required, the training that's required for the jobs today. So I'm just going to do a comparison between 1960 and today, so 58 years later. But if you look at that, we know that a certain number of jobs actually do require a 4-year education, or 4-year college. And so it actually is increased. So if you've heard anybody say this initiative is really trying to steer all of our kids toward a 2-year college or toward work, or they're just trying to give kids what they need in high school and then that's the end. That is absolutely false, because we know that there are a lot of jobs out there and actually it's increasing, jobs that take 4 years of college. This one is a significant change though, because in 1960, or I would even argue later than that, there was a few jobs, 20% of the jobs that took skilled training. So those are the jobs, and I'm going to show you a slide. Those are jobs for which kids go to college because they want to do that job. They have a particular job in mind and they need to get that specific training. Not necessarily an extremely global, well-rounded, or completely diverse set of courses, but they need to target their education. We're talking about skilled labor jobs. 60% of the jobs today are targeted jobs, skilled jobs. Jobs like cosmetology, production and imaging, millwright. Huge call for people to work and fix all of the equipment. A lot of skills in emergency medical, health fields, manufacturing. And those are things that kids can learn right now, go to college, and then head right into the market. And they're good paying jobs. Here's another change. The third change is the green. It's gone in the unskilled jobs. So in 1960, a lot of jobs were unskilled. And unskilled, I'm going to use the definition as unskilled, meaning didn't necessarily need training after high school and probably didn't even need a high school diploma. And you probably know people who have wonderful jobs, good paying jobs, maybe a little bit older, did not go to college. And did not have a diploma, a high school diploma. But that is really shrinking. So there's only about 10% of the jobs out there right now that don't take a high school, maybe don't take a high school diploma and certainly don't take any college, about 10%. So it is true that there are some jobs out there, but I don't know as a parent that I'd want to roll the dice or play the odds with my own children that they could get one of those jobs. And I bet they're not the highest paying jobs either, 10%. So that really has definitely changed over time. There is a rule that's fairly common, and we call it the degree rule. For every 1 job requiring a master's, there's 2 jobs requiring a bachelor's degree, and approximately 7 jobs requiring 1 or 2 years of training, a one year or 2 year certificate. So we want to make sure that we are kind of providing our kids with something that makes them extremely marketable after high school. This just shows why our job's unfilled. And I actually have heard that more so. I'm not sure that I would have thought that that was the case prior to being on this task force, but I have talked to employer after employer after employer saying, we either left it unfilled or we filled it with somebody who wasn't completely as qualified as what we wanted, and we're hoping that they will be able to fill that. So we're hearing that. Lack of technical skills, people that come with all of the training that they need to do a specific job. Soft skills we know are an issue, soft skills being communication, collaboration, ability to get along with others. So now let's talk about Waterloo. Think of that original picture. I said we've got two forces kind of diverging on our high school reform. We've got the national labor market issues, and then we've got Waterloo challenges. You see on this screen right now are graduation trends for Waterloo schools. What this means, just so you know, a graduation rate, the way that the state calculates that is they look at kids when they come into high school. So if you've had children go through high school or will go through high school, when they step in the door at on their freshman year, they get tagged to a cohort class. And they've tracked those kids to see how many of them stay with their peers and graduate in 4 years. And so this is a 4-year graduation rate. And what I would argue is that, you know, we know that about 70% of our kids stay with their cohort, they finish in the 4 years. But I would argue that we're not necessarily, if it takes a child an extra year, I'm okay with that. I would assume you are too. If it takes them 5 years, that's fine. If it takes them 6 years, that's fine, but they have to get a high school diploma. The reason that we really do try to keep them with their peers is because typically the longer it takes, the higher the chance of a dropout. That's the higher the chance that they leave us. So if we looked at this cohort class, and we'll get the stats on this particular class, if we said, well, how many of them did we snag, did they earn a high school diploma within that next year, maybe that 5th year? It probably will go up some, you know, maybe 75, maybe 78%, but the truth is that we have in Waterloo every year 20 to 25% of kids who do not graduate. They don't graduate in 4 years, they don't graduate in 5 years. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I would argue too that it certainly is a school problem. It's a community problem. Parents, we know it's a variety of factors that cause children to drop out. We want to do better. We want to do better. So if you look at the cost of dropping out, there's a cost to that individual child when they leave school. Certainly a cost. But there's also cost on everybody who is helping that person after they drop out. So I want to show you something. The cost to the individual. First of all, if we're just looking at the child who drops out, they're going to earn less, $10,000 less a year than somebody who just has that high school diploma. So the diploma does mean a lot. More likely to be unemployed, twice as likely to live in poverty. And this one I think is pretty staggering. Of the people who are incarcerated, 70% of them do not have a high school diploma. And if you look that up, you will find that that's probably the lowest number. I actually used a conservative number there, but there are numbers that you will see 75% of the people in jail or prison have no high school diploma. And some of them even say 80%. We have to get kids to graduate. Bottom line. Bottom line. So the cost to everyone. Over the child's lifespan, and again, this is a fairly conservative number. You will find numbers that are higher, but over a student's lifespan, the collective cost of that high school child who has dropped out that's a conservative number, $290,000. And what does that money go for? I've tagged just a few things. Lost tax revenue, because if they're not earning as much, they're not paying as much in taxes. So somebody has to fill in that gap. Public assistance, incarceration systems. And if you look at some of the stats that state officials, national officials use to decide jail size, prison size, they will look at how a child is performing through school. We have to reach our kids. We have to. In Iowa, approximately 8,000 dropouts every year. And a significant number of them are here, and in Cedar Falls, and in Des Moines, and everywhere. So the task force really looked at that. And so we knew a lot of things. We knew that, for the majority of kids, we're doing okay. We've got 70%, maybe 78% of our kids who are graduating. For the majority of kids, we're doing okay. But we also believe that every child has to have the opportunities to go on, because we want to set everyone up for success. So if you look at the second one, I'm going to highlight it there, 150 to 200 students drop out of Waterloo Schools every year. They may come back for a little while, and they may drop again. But if we can't engage them, we know what happens. You just saw in the previous slide the cost of that. So we want to do better. We absolutely want to do better. And while we're at it, we also want to make sure that they are reading and writing. It's not just enough to have a high school diploma. That diploma has to mean something in the way of skills. We have to improve our graduation rate. We have to decrease our dropout rate, and we have to equalize opportunities for all. Not everybody's going to do exactly the same thing, but they have to have the opportunities because they're kids. They're kids. So the task force went on visits. Our approach was that we really wanted to look at communities that are like Waterloo and find out, they were like us in demographics, they were like us in industry, they were maybe like us in size. And so we went to a variety of places. Some of them, some of the schools were about the size of West and about the size of East. And you can see the map. And we actually visited 20 different schools. And I personally went to, quite a handful of them. And we started looking at different types of programs that I would consider innovative. So you can see some of the things on there. Project-based learning schools. There's a great school that really does everything project-based, where kids are solving problems and doing projects. Technical high schools, comprehensive high schools, and you can see the list. And what happened fairly quickly is that we really centered in on technical high schools as one of the innovative options that could be right for Waterloo. And so my job tonight is to help you understand what a technical high school is so that you can decide if it makes sense to you.
A lot of kids will get the chemistry or get the physics, but they won't get the hands-on labs like I get. They won't get the hands-on things that we do, and it just prepares you and gives you that extra notch ahead of everybody else to go into the real world and start your profession.
Students in normal high schools tend to just sit in their classes and wonder what they're doing here, where at St. George's everything's very focused and you're worried about the future. It's something that's constantly on your brain.
The advantage is that once you complete this program, you can get a job paying you well over what minimum wage is. You can make a fair amount of money in this program, and it's free.
Okay, so I'm gonna check the back. Do I feel anything?
And they leave here with a basic understanding of the medical field and what it's going to require of them to stay in it. Okay. And that's what I like, that, okay, if I want to be a nurse, this is what I have to do. I can take this educational experience and apply it to my formal education.
So you can learn anything from culinary arts to carpentry to auto body to nurse tech to early childhood. It prepares you for your life at an early age during your 4 years. And by the time you get out in the work field, you should be more familiar for what's expected.
You still have to have a certain amount of regular classes to graduate on top of your career area.
When you get to be able to just work hands-on, because I've never been able to keep my head in a book all day long. I get too out of focus and I don't want to pay attention. So being able to work hands-on half the day makes me a lot stronger as a student.
I would say the enthusiasm that they show and the eagerness that they can get out and actually work. They love doing the work. They're successful in the classroom, but they absolutely love being out here, being engaged the whole class time.
We're just not here to show them a trade itself, and call it a day. We're actually here to give them the soft skills that are needed.
Not only do we learn theory, but then we take that theory and we practice it before we go out into the clinical setting.
It's just another way for kids to learn a skill before they actually get into the real world. They'll be very professional when they get to the real world. They'll know exactly what to deal with. It's an easy step to start their career.
Nothing in this school is holding you back from going to college, where it's basically preparing you more. If anything, preparing you more for college.
In our VOTEX, kids can also go to a 4-year college, 2-year college, go right into work. It just gives them a lot of pathways, opens doors. Where I think our kids have an advantage of VOTEX is we teach kids to troubleshoot, problem solve, error analysis, all the real life skills they need. We also harp strongly on employability skills.
So I want you to think of somebody who is like Jane Lindemann, like me, who really enjoyed learning for learning's sake. Maybe it was you. You love to go, you love to I actually loved to read a textbook. I love to learn. And then there's people that are not like Jane Lindemann who want to do and fix and explore. And we want to be a system, we want to be a school system that offers both of those options for kids. So here's how that might look. We are proposing to realign our courses. And so we would go deeper, not wider. And here's an example, and I'm going to click the screen, and I know there's a lot of boxes on it, so don't panic because I'm going to explain it a little bit. This is a visual that might show you a fairly typical, traditional program. And it's really something similar to what I went to. I've got the core. Every program, every high school offers all of the core subjects, literacy, social studies, math. And then they offer a bank of electives because we believe that kids need to see both sides of that. So here's what, and a child might take a class here, and they might take a couple classes here and a couple classes here. And these are kind of stacked up because one might be 1 year and the next year they take the next level of class. What we're proposing to do is this. Arranging our courses so that there are levels of courses where kids can go deep. They still could take, should they so choose, one here, one here, one here, one here. That's fine. If they're like me and they love to just explore a variety of things, there's nothing wrong with that, and we want to support that. But for other kids, they want something a little bit different. So we're talking about arranging our courses so that kids could take a series of courses, maybe something as a sophomore, maybe something as a junior, something as a senior, and go deeper. And by the time they're done, they actually know a lot more than what they would have. They're actually ready to go on to college. And what happens? We heard it all across the nation. What happens is kids are so engaged that they come to school. They're so engaged that they graduate. They're so engaged that they go on to college. And that's why Hawkeye has been with us all the way through this, because they know that. They know that this is not competition for them. This is actually a compliment for them, because our kids will go farther. We talk about the word pathway, and I should have mentioned that. If a kid chooses to align their courses and keep going deeper, that's really, they're choosing a pathway. They're choosing a career pathway. So just a few more slides, and then we're going to get to facilities that would support this kind of work. Here's one particular pathway. We are looking to allow kids to jumpstart into one of the pathways. We're not looking to prepare them to do something that takes a 2 or a 4-year degree. We're not looking at, but we want to keep kids in school, and we believe that this can do it. And it can springboard them into going on to college. Here's another pathway. We could actually prepare kids and hook them so that they could enter into a pathway, then they can go to college and finish something else. It's not the end, it's the beginning, it's the jump start, and we're keeping them in school. So I want you to judge this for a minute. You heard what Delaware kids said, you heard what I talked about. I want you to judge this, because all along the way the task force has said we have to find something that is contagiously engaging for kids, for all kids. So, and we know that one of the options was career. If we can enter in career options, we can snag the kids, engage them at higher levels. And we've got to help them plan for what comes next. Would this improve our graduation rate? Do you know of any kids for whom this might be the right type of program? Maybe your son, maybe your daughter, maybe somebody else.
The fact that we are talking about giving kids certifications by the time they get out of high school, I think is huge. They will see what it will do for them later in life, And it will do one of two things. It can lead them directly to a job, or in many cases, it will cut time off of their post-secondary education plans.
I would have been able to get started earlier than to have to spend the $20,000 I'm going to be spending at the college. I'll be making more money, and I'd be getting higher benefits than I would be if I went to the two-year college, far away from home, and I wouldn't have to look as hard for the opportunities there are, because the opportunities would be right here.
I think it would have gotten me more involved in what I wanted to do instead of trying to figure it all out last minute. It would have given me a better idea.
They sound like pretty lucky that they have that chance to me. And if I would have had that, then maybe I would have already been started in the career path I wanted.
They can try and do what they wanted to do before they graduate.
They wouldn't have to wait to do what they want. Like with nursing, if they wanted to do nursing, they wouldn't have to wait till after high school.
People have different interests on what they want to do. And like if they have the choice to do it earlier than normal, it'd be a lot better.
Children like to be engaged. They like to do stuff. They don't like to just sit and have somebody continuously just talking to them. They want to know what's going on. How do I do this? That will keep their interest more.
Key to the high school student is to get them actively engaged, like more hands-on, and so that's right up my alley, the science part.
I think the more offerings we can have for hands-on inquiry learning throughout our school district will improve our retention level. As I think the more interest students have in what they're doing, then they're going to be more likely to return to our classrooms and to ultimately graduate.
A lot of kids that don't have the opportunity, that may not have the finances to help themselves or to be able to go where they want to go, I think those would be some excellent programs for them. And if we're losing them, if they had something to hold on to, I think that would be the key.
It gives the kids a way to kind of figure out what they want to do before they go to college, so they're not wasting money and being in debt.
For 20 people we interview, we would only hire one of those people. There's something wrong when we wouldn't be able to hire at least half of them. And that's a fact. We cannot hire everybody that walks in this front door because they have not been trained. They're not prepared for the workplace. And that's why we're engaging in education to make it more of developing our talent, because it's the talent that really is going to make the difference to keep us competitive, to keep businesses in our community thriving and alive and competitive into the future.
Those students coming out of school are going to fuel economic growth in the future, and that raises everyone's boats. That benefits everyone. That involves everyone's child, everyone's grandchild. That is the future of our community. So we have to be together on this.
So the two takeaways that I would hope that you would have from this meeting is, first of all, what is Waterloo pursuing? We are pursuing options for kids, one of which is looking at technical programming. And we know that it's going to require us to think differently about all of the things up there, the way that we train our staff, what our equipment is in our buildings, facilities, our course alignment. So let's talk a little bit about facilities. We knew as a committee that we wanted to offer professional technical. We knew that fairly quickly. And we knew that we wanted to eliminate program duplication. And by program duplication, I'm talking about having two buildings where we offer exactly the same thing, because if you saw the equipment, if you are purchasing that for one building and you have to purchase the exact same equipment for another building, you're duplicating your cost. So if you would offer it over here, maybe offer something different at a different location. We probably looked at 20 to 30 plans, would be my guess, over the course of this span. And I'm going to just put up 6 of them. And after a lot of work, we really came to focus on 3 themes that would definitely be viable for us. Number 1 is to look at East and West and add programming, unduplicated programming at each of those. Another theme that emerged was looking at Central Middle School. Why Central? Central was built as a high school, and it has a lot of open base space. It's got a good shell of a building that could easily be remodeled at lower cost. Or we've seen it done across the nation where there's been a career center, where there's a separate facility where kids go to East or West for part of the day, or Expo for part of the day, and then they ride a bus to a career center and get part of these, and doing that would also allow us not to duplicate it because we'd have it in one setting. So what could it look like if we went with theme number 1? What could it look like? Well, East could be updated to add a few programs, 4. 3, 5. West, same thing. And students who pursue a career pathway could attend their school of their choice. That's one way that it could look. How it looks depends on you and others. What could it look like if we did combined high schools? We could put 10 through 12 grades at Central. 8th and 9th could be at East and West based on boundaries. We could split grades 5 through 7 at the remaining middle schools. And by remaining, I mean 3, Hoover, Bunger, and Carver. And we could put grades PK4 at the existing 11 elementaries. And each one of these plans comes with limitations and benefits. One of the benefits of this piece is that our elementaries are really full, so it takes 1 grade out. So, I mean, down the road, we've looked at maybe needing a 12th elementary because we're really growing in that area. What about this permutation? In that case, that's another, and these are all in the theme too. In this case, it uses West. Instead of using it as the 8-9 building, it uses it as a middle school. And that frees up Hoover for a 12th elementary. What about that one? What about this? And I'm not going to click my slide again, but I want you to know I could keep bringing up options because there are multiple ways that we can look at combining the high schools and how that would play out. Finally, Career Center, what could that look like? East and West stay as comprehensive buildings and a Career Center is established somewhere. Maybe at Central, maybe somewhere else. And then students are bused for part of the day. And the only reason I put this in here is because many of you have heard that we also have at the same time a separate group that's really looking at extracurriculars and how to bolster those opportunities for kids. And so we knew that we have issues there that they are trying to also improve and trying to work through that may be best addressed at the same time. And I could not tell you if one of your questions was, so what exactly would that be? I couldn't tell you that right now, but we do know that as we select one of the themes, you know, or a different theme, we're going to keep in mind the other work that we're doing in case we can tackle 2 things at one time. So finally, our next steps. Communicate widely, that's right now. We plan, I told you on November 18th, if I wake up and you wake up and we have one plan that's really kind of gaining some momentum, we need to put some specifics to that. What would that look like? January, build consensus. And then there's a big question mark here. Secure support and resources, and the reason I put April there is because that is the earliest possible time that we could look at funding this. And it may not be April. It just depends on how far we can go. And then we're looking for planning and implementing, and that would happen thereafter. The first time that this could probably actually be ready to implement, I would guess, is probably at least 3 years out. At least 3 years out. And I can promise you that because we know it is such a promising practice for kids, we are going to continue to take steps to do what we can right now. It may not be something huge like merging buildings, but we are going to continue to take steps in that direction because we want desperately to hit the mark for all kids. So please keep checking our website. There's going to be all kinds of information out there. Please tell your friends, check out the website. If they can't come to one of these meetings, tell them to look at the website because there's an 8.5-minute overview video with just some of the basics. And email or call. There's information there for all kinds of lines, all kinds of things that you can do to get your questions answered.